StraightallDay.com.
Knowledge is about addition. Wisdom is about subtraction. Now, we just talked yesterday about the essence of editing. And before we even get into this, I want to tell you a couple, or at least one time specifically in the past, episode 1712, I talked about converting knowledge to wisdom. I gave you a step-by-step blueprint for doing that. Again, that was episode number 1712. But since we talked about editing yesterday, today, in this masterclass, I want to talk about how high-level decision makers rise above noise. Noise being all the possible distractions that take you off the path of the essential and effective things that you need to be doing, and focus on what matters the most to get the outcomes that need to be achieved. Excuse me. We have been talking about this in yesterday's masterclass, and today I'm going to double down on that concept by giving you a counterintuitive perspective that hopefully opens the minds of a listener or three, because there's different levels to this, and knowledge is on one level, wisdom is at a higher and more important level. That's what I want you to get in the introduction here. Now let's get into the point so you understand that on a deeper level. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is knowledge is addition, wisdom is subtraction. Number one, knowledge is about adding on more. Go get more information, go read another book, go take another course, or listen to another episode, go watch another YouTube video, go absorb more or soak up more game, as people like to say. Wisdom is about getting more through yourself. It's about getting more things actually done, more things achieved. As I said, wisdom is more subtraction, knowledge is more addition. The etymology of the word education, for example, means leading out from within. That's what education is, to lead out from within. That's the etymology of the word, meaning that's the root where it comes from. In other words, to educate a person is to help that person understand things that are already self-evident. They already exist. Your job as the educator is to lead people to see things that they otherwise may not have been noticing, and to lead people to discover things on their own. That's what education actually means. That's the etymology of the word. That's the root of the term. If you look at the educational system in the United States, which I've often criticized, you notice that in the United States, regardless of what level you have matriculated to, any of you who went to school in the United States, you see that the educational system here is the exact opposite of what I just described. Educational system in America is all about giving you information. It's not leading information out of you, and it's not leading you to information. It's just giving you the information. Here's the information. It's right here in this textbook. Here's the information. I'm going to give you a lecture on it. Here's the information. Here's a guest speaker to tell you everything that you need to believe and everything that you're supposed to think. That's the quote unquote education system in America. It should be called the miseducation, because it's miseducating people even on the essence of what education actually means. So whatever level of school you went to, you experienced this. Now, you could have been an 8th grade dropout, you experienced it. So the educational system here is all about the teachers and the textbooks inputting rather than leading information out. Inputting information into you rather than leading information or knowledge out of you. So you read the books, you attend the lectures, you take notes, then they give you a test on which you must prove that you have retained all the information that was given to you. That's all the system is. They put information in you and then they test you on your retention of the information. That's the opposite of the word. So that's why when people in America talk about being quote unquote educated, what they don't understand is what the etymology of the word actually means. The education that we get here in America, someone with a high school diploma, college degree, or advanced degree, they think that they're educated because of how much school they went to, and what they actually are is more indoctrinated than they are educated. You just proved how indoctrinated you are by getting better grades. And this is the reason why quote unquote educated people don't really like engaging with me, because I call out this nonsense that basically undermines the very foundation upon which they build their self-worth and their careers. But I digress. What they're really talking about is gathering information, and then they call that knowledge. That's not what it is. Wisdom, on the other hand, is all about taking all the knowledge and information that has been input into you, or that you have gathered yourself, wherever you got the knowledge and information, and then you suss out what matters the most, what needs to be utilized to achieve the optimal desired outcomes. That's wisdom. Let me make this more simple. Knowledge is about gathering information. And generally speaking, colloquially, people tend to think that you are more knowledgeable the more information you have gathered and retained. The more information you gather and retain, the more knowledgeable you appear to be. Other people will also call this person smart, or they'll call you intelligent if they happen to like you. All right, someone will say you're intelligent if they like what you're saying, not necessarily because they have any measure of your intelligence. Wisdom, on the other hand, is not about any of that. It's not about gathering information. It's not about how much of it you have. And it's also not about your ability to spew it out in an articulate and smooth way. Wisdom is about, with all the information and knowledge, quote unquote, that you have access to, do you know which information and or knowledge to access at what times and for what reason and how to deploy it? That's what wisdom is. How do you deploy the right information and the right knowledge at the right times and in the right way? And also, another piece of wisdom is, which information and knowledge do you leave out and ignore and not use at the wrong times? Because you got to know when to use certain things. You also got to know when not to use them. That's part of wisdom. Wisdom is not just, what do I use so I can do this? It's also, what do I not use, being that this is the situation? And a lot of people have a whole lot of knowledge and a whole lot of information, but they lack wisdom because they don't know which knowledge or information to pull out in which cases, if you were to put them in a situation that they weren't able to prepare for ahead of time. Now, I told you that professionals prepare ahead of time for every situation, but the reality, not even buts, and the reality of life is sometimes situations happen that you couldn't prepare for because you did not know they were coming. Sometimes the situation interrupts your regularly scheduled program. Wise people are able to deal with those situations because they're able to discern in real time which information and knowledge to access and which information and knowledge to ignore. That's what wisdom is about. Taking all the knowledge and info you've been given or that you've gathered and sussing out, what do I use right now? These days, this has become more easy with current technology to gather more factual information, to read more books, take more advice, or at least get the essence of information, advice, and books. So you don't even have to read a book and someone will give you a breakdown of what the book is. Wisdom is about what you ignore, eliminate, and deem unnecessary on a case-by-case basis. That's the key. Because the same knowledge that you ignore in one situation, you may focus on and use it in the next situation. So knowledge is about adding on more. Wisdom is about getting more through to yourself and using more of what you know in the right way and in the most effective way is the better word that I would use. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is knowledge is about addition. Wisdom is about subtraction. Number 2, knowledge fills your head while wisdom clears your path. Knowledge fills your head while wisdom clears your path. One of the challenges of knowledge is that you are cramming more and more information into your mind, and eventually your mind could eventually get to a point of overload. It just has so much in it that it can't take anything else in, and because of all the material that has been stuffed into it, it hasn't quite made sense of all of it, and it's hard for you to discern which information should you access at which times and for which reason, because it's all kind of been thrown in there. It's kind of like you go to the buffet and you get a little piece of everything and just fill your plate as much as you possibly can, and you don't even think about, how does one piece that I put on here match with the other piece, and do these even go together, or would this be good news for my stomach if I put all of these different things in there all at the same time? I don't know. See, when you're gathering knowledge and consuming information in the pursuit of knowledge, the false pursuit of knowledge, this is what you're doing. You're just gathering everything you're picking a little piece of everything off the buffet and eating it all at the same time just because it's there and just because it's available. This is the way a lot of people live these days in our information heavy world. They're just taking in all of the information they can get, and they consider themselves more knowledgeable simply because they have more information, or they're more informed, or they're more quote unquote educated, which you're not. You're actually miseducated. All knowledge does is fill up your head and take up space. That's what it does. It's like a person going to the buffet eating a whole bunch of food. You're filling up your stomach, yes, but is that actually what you need? Do you need to fill up your stomach? Is it a good idea to fill up your stomach when you know you're already 43 pounds overweight? Is that really a good idea? Do you really need that? I remember I was in college, and before our games, whenever we would play games on the road, in the school that I played at a school that was a Division III college called Penn State Altoona. All of our road games we traveled to by bus. We didn't fly to any games. So we're traveling by bus, and when we would travel, we would often stop. Let's say the game is at 7 or 8 o'clock that night. We would leave campus around 1 in the afternoon if it was a place that was far away. And we would stop at a local restaurant to eat before we finished the trip to go to the game. looking back, this is actually not the ideal process. Like these days, I would never want to eat a meal a few hours before a game. Not in that way. I would eat the meal way ahead. So I had many hours for that food to digest and get out of my system before the game. Most of the time we were playing, looking back on it, we were playing with all that food still sitting in our stomach. It hadn't digested yet. But anyway, I'm telling that story not because of that. One time this happened actually more than once, with more than one coach actually this happened, that we're traveling to the game and we stopped to eat and everybody on the team is going to the food place, and usually we went to a buffet so that there was enough food choices for everybody to get what they want. We didn't have to worry about menus. Almost every time we ate at a buffet. So we're at the buffet and players are walking back and forth to the buffet, and the coaches, obviously, they're seeing us, they're watching us, they're observing what we're doing. They're having their own conversation, but they're also observing what we're doing. And more than once, I've seen a coach say, not to me directly, but to other players, looking at the food that a player had on his plate, coming back to the table, and the coach said, "You don't need to eat that. You don't need to be eating that. All right, do you really need that on your plate?" And they would say it to certain players, and it would become funny. It can sometimes become a running joke because it might be a guy who's kind of big, and the coach would say, "Do you really need to eat that? You really need another piece of steak? You really need to be eating those muffins? Do you really need that biscuit?" And this would happen. All right, and I'm bringing that up to say, when people are in the pursuit of knowledge by gathering more information, that's all you're doing is just eating food because the buffet is making it available. The problem with a buffet is that they never stop giving you food. And eventually you eat yourself out of house and home, as my parents used to say, or my mom used to say. I won't put that on my dad. Wisdom, on the other hand, clears your path. What wisdom does is it clears your path because just like we talked about yesterday in the episode on editing, it cuts out all the non-essential and just focuses on the stuff that matters the most. There are people listening to me right now that feel like you're stuck because you don't have the right information to take the next step. How many of you feel like that? Raise your hand if you feel like the reason you're stuck right now is because you don't quite have the right information that would take you to the next step, whatever the next step may be. You don't even know what it is, but you don't have the information, so you can't know what it is. How many of you are in that position right now? I'm going to tell you something. I'm not disputing your feelings, but I am disputing your approach. I'm going to dispute your approach and tell you that your stuckness is not because you lack information. That is not the issue. You are stuck because you have too much information. All right, that's why you're stuck. You have too much information. You have gathered too much quote unquote knowledge. That's not actual knowledge. And because of it, you don't know which of that information you have gathered you should actually apply and in which order you should apply the information, or even why that information matters. And you can't tell me, you can't discern between the essential information that would actually help you and the useless information that is just taking up space, filling up your stomach, but doing nothing for you nutritionally, if you follow my metaphor here. And the reason why this is happening, let me tell you why this is happening. It's not because there's anything necessarily wrong with you. What is wrong is how you've been taught. So there's nothing wrong with you essentially as a person, as a being. What's wrong is the way you've been taught, which has affected your mindset. The good thing about mindset is that it can easily change. And the mindset changes first by breaking the false beliefs that you have in your head. Some of you have some false beliefs about things that are absolutely not true. And until those false beliefs get broken, I can't do anything for you. The quickest way I can help anybody change anything in their lives, whether it's something physical, whether it's business related, whether it's money related, whether it's relationship related, doesn't even matter what it is. The easiest way I can change anything for anybody or help you change, you actually have to change. But the only easiest way I can help anybody change is, first of all, you have to accept that some things that you believe are true are not true. These are also known as false beliefs. And until you break your false beliefs, no amount of information is going to change anything. All the information is going to do is take you deeper and deeper into the hole that you're already in. So I'm going to break the false belief by telling you that your hunt for and gathering of and accumulating of information that was taught to you through the miseducational system in the United States of America put you in a bad spot because you are of this belief at 30 years old or 45 years old or 63 years old that gathering more information is the solution to your problem. No, that is the reason for your problem. It's not the solution for the problem. The reason you have a problem is because you keep gathering more information every time you have a problem. That's why you have a problem. So you're exacerbating your own issues. That's how you got stuck. The reason why, again, this was taught to you. All right, so don't blame yourself. You can blame yourself, but it's not essentially because of you. I mean, it's not like you decided to go into the miseducational system in America. The system was given to you and you just jumped into it because that looked like the right thing to do. And your parents probably told you to go to school and get all the information and get good grades, et cetera, et cetera. And here you are. Okay, you have too much information. You don't know when to apply. You don't even know if you have the right information. You've been taught that filling your head with more information moves you forward. You've been lied to. All right, you were lied to by people who meant well, and they were trying to help. They just didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I'm talking about your parents. I'm talking about your friends. I'm talking about your school teachers. I'm talking about the adults in your life who told you, go to school, gather all the information, get those books, study that information, pass the test, and that'll prove that you're good. That'll prove that you're knowledgeable, intelligent, and informed, and that'll make everything successful. Well, look in the mirror. How's that turning out? We all know that gathering more information is not the key to success. Actually, we should know. Hopefully we know that. You should all know that, because there are Googles and YouTubes and libraries and AI bots that have basically gathered all the world's information. 99% of it, you have access to it generally, essentially for free. So if gathering information is the key to success, then everybody here should be wildly successful with no problem, because we all got access to all the information literally at our fingertips, essentially for free. So what's the problem? The problem is that's a lie. Gathering information is not the key to success. Wisdom clears the path because it cuts out all the useless stuff, all the useless junk and noise, quote unquote, information that is currently in your way. What's in your way these days, folks, is not ignorance. It's not that you don't know something. It's that you do know stuff, but all the stuff that you know is useless. That's what's in your way. Should I say that one again? Let me say that one again, because I want to make sure everybody in the back heard me. What's in your way these days is not ignorance. Ignorance just means not to know something. Ignorance is not what's in your way. Most people think ignorance is in their way. What's actually in your way is that you have a plethora of information, a plethora of quote unquote knowledge that is completely useless. And until you get that shit out of the way, you're going to continue to stay stuck. Your problem is not that you need to add more knowledge or add more information. What you need to do is get rid of a bunch of the bullshit that you have been taught and a bunch of the bullshit that you have come to believe, so that the essential is the only thing left, and then act on that. And that's when things are going to start working. Everybody heard that? Anybody unclear on what I'm saying? Wisdom is about stripping away the clutter so that the actions that need to be taken now become obvious. Now the actions that need to be taken become what people like to refer to as quote unquote common sense. It's not common sense if everybody doesn't see the same thing, and everybody does not. So be careful of that term, common sense. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is knowledge is about addition, whereas wisdom is about subtraction. Point number 3. The world rewards clarity. The world that we live in, ladies and gentlemen, you get rewarded for being clear. You do not get rewarded for gathering information. You do not get rewarded for knowing stuff. You do not get rewarded for having more information. You get rewarded for clarity. When you are very clear, people know exactly what they're getting. They know exactly what you're saying. They know exactly where you're going, and you know exactly what they need to do to be involved in anything that you are offering or sharing or purporting or engaged in. When those things are clear, the world will reward you. But you got to get clear first. The problem for a lot of people, the challenge for a lot of people, it's not really a problem. The challenge for a lot of people is that they are extremely unclear on what they're doing, where they're doing it, who they're doing it for, why they're doing it, how they do it, and how anybody else can be involved. Most people are trying way too hard these days to be complex. I don't think people are trying to be complex, but the more you add on to a thing, the more complex you make it, because the more things you add on to something, the more you're requiring anyone who wants to get involved to be able to comprehend, understand, and digest in order to engage. You understand? The more stuff you add on to a thing, the harder it is for the average person to digest it, because you keep adding things on. So I tell you, I got a book called The Third Day. What's the third day about? It's about how do you show up and give your best effort on days you don't feel like doing anything. I call that day the third day. Everybody knows what that is, like, right? Everybody nods their head when I say that. Okay, I wrote a whole book on how to solve that problem. There's a reason why The Third Day is my most popular book, because everyone understands the challenge of the situation that I've labeled the third day. Everybody knows what that means. Every one of you listening to this, even if your life and your background and the way that you have lived up to this point is nothing like my background, you still very well understand the concept of the third day, because I just explained it to you. You understand it very well, don't you? Why do you understand it really well? Because everybody who's listening to me has lived the concept of the third day. Everybody's been in a situation where you didn't feel like working, you didn't feel like doing something, but you knew you had to do it anyway. You had to figure out, how do I get myself to do this? Or you didn't do it. But everybody gets it. See, a lot of you have been taught that what makes you smart, and being smart is a good thing, is taking in more information. Okay? That leads to you listening to too many different people, reading too much different material, watching too many different YouTube videos, and all of it becomes noise in your head. The more material you take in, the more noise you get. You got to cut shit out. Wisdom simplifies things and gives you a clear path towards execution. That's what wisdom is about. Simplification. Insight is about simplification. I mentioned a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. What's the book about? What's the main thing that needs to get done? And let's get rid of everything else. What are some other books that are very popular? All right, The One Thing. There's a book called The One Thing. There is no one thing, honestly, but the reason why that book is so popular is because the title is The One Thing. What is the essence of the title? The essence of the title is telling you that if you focus on just one thing, you can be successful. The one thing. My favorite book, The 48 Laws of Power. Why is that book popular? Because it tells you exactly what it's going to give you before you open the book. It's going to give you 48 laws of power. Okay, 48 laws to be powerful. Okay, I want power. I'll read the 48 laws. There you go. That's why the book sold very well. And Robert Greene tends to do that a lot. He has the 33 strategies of war. He knows what he's doing. Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week, is a very simple concept offering you something that seems out of reach, but damn, he wrote a whole book about it. Maybe it's real. Let me read it. Wisdom simplifies, folks. Notice that the idea is that wisdom is all about things that will lead you to execution, not just gathering information. All the stuff that you've taken in, that you remember, the stuff you retain, they're the simple ideas. They don't require you to go back and read the whole book to remember what God said. See, if you got to go back and read the whole book to remember what God said, it wasn't simple enough. You read one of my books, the things you remember are the ideas that were simple enough that also resonated with you. See, any idea I give you that's complex, you probably won't retain it. Most people won't retain complex things because they're too complex. Or you got to be really smart. The problem is most people ain't really smart. I know you're smart, but not everybody's really smart. See, the ones that you carry and take with you are the simple ideas. And you get them as soon as you hear them. No one even has to explain it, and you get it. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was talking to one of my coaching clients. His name is Steve. And we were just talking about his business, and it's a couple questions he was asking me. And one of his coworkers named Rachel was also on the call. And I mentioned the concept of hustle porn. I did a whole episode on hustle porn. Those of you who did not hear it, let me tell you where that is. That was episode number 1881, a vaccine for hustle porn. And as soon as I said it, Steve, I guess he wasn't around back in episode 1881. He didn't hear me say it, but he immediately just started cracking up laughing because I didn't explain what it was. I didn't explain the concept of hustle porn. As soon as I said it, he got it. See, that's what you want. You want concepts that are simple enough that people understand it without you having to explain it. If you got to explain it too much, then it's too complex for the average person. Now, if you're talking to a bunch of Rhodes scholars and brain surgeons, then be as complex as you want because they're allegedly very smart people, at least from what I've heard. Okay, the wisest person does not give you a lecture's worth of information, or at least they don't have to. They can keep it real simple. They say a few things that make the most impact. Remember that essentialism is about what you subtract, not what you add. Let's recap today's class, which is knowledge is addition, wisdom is subtraction. This is following up on what we talked about yesterday. Number one, knowledge is about adding more. Wisdom is about getting more thorough and getting more things done, getting more things through and completed. So the etymology of education is about leading out from within. We know that what we've been taught is education, at least in the United States, is about inputting. In other words, the exact opposite of education, what education actually means. Number two, knowledge fills your head while wisdom clears your path. There are people listening to me right now who feel stuck because you feel like you don't have the right information. The problem is you got too much information. Number three, the world rewards clarity. All right, people will beat down your door when your offer and your message are extremely clear and is something that they want. You find that mix, you'll get people beating down your door. And most people are making things too complex by putting all of your severe knowledge, intellect, and information into what you're offering, when instead you need to strip it down and make it simple as hell to where they can't mess it up. There's an app out there that used to be called Bourbon. Some of you may know about this app Bourbon. The app Bourbon's thing was, its shtick was that it was going to allow you to it was similar to like Yelp or an app like Foursquare. And I don't know if Foursquare still exists, where you could travel around, you could tag yourself in certain locations, you could write reviews of places, you could post pictures of yourself in those places, you could make friends with other people, you could send messages. There was a whole lot of things you could do moving around and just showing yourself around town and doing stuff. And the app Bourbon wasn't doing too well, or at least the developers who made it didn't like how it was doing after maybe a few months or a year or so. And they were thinking about shutting down the whole app. But before they did that, they just took a look at what they had and looked at what are people using in this app. They weren't using the app enough, but they wanted to see what are people using in this app that they like the most, that they seem to like the most. And it seemed like people were using taking a picture of yourself or taking pictures of things aspect of the app more than they liked anything else. And there was one noted feature that they had when it came to taking the pictures that people seemed to be using a lot was the filters. That you could take a picture, then you could put a little filter on the picture, and it seemed like people were engaging with the take photos aspect of the app more than they were engaging with any other part of the app. So the developer said, before we shut down the whole app, how about we just take it down, redesign it, and instead of having all these bells and whistles on the app, how about we just make an app that's all about taking pictures, and you can filter the picture and then just post the picture. Let's just try that, because it seems like that's what everybody's doing anyway. So why don't we just make an app, or just let's redesign our app and relaunch it as an app that's just about taking pictures and filtering them. So they decided to do that. And before they relaunched the app, they decided they got to change the name, because Bourbon didn't quite sound right. So they figured, what can we call it? Well, we want people to be able to instantly post pictures, and it's going to be like a Telegram. Telegram's like a photo that you send. So let's just combine those two words and let's rename the app from Bourbon to Instagram. And they put it back out as Instagram. Everybody knows the rest of the story. If you didn't know the beginning, now I just told you. Now Instagram is Instagram. Why? Because they took all the pieces of what they had. They found the essential part that was getting the most response from the marketplace, and they said, let's just design a whole app around that. Seems too simple, but here we are over 10 years later, and look at Instagram. That's essentialism. Work on Your Game University, folks, is where we focus on what's essential, what matters the most, what produces the most results, and thusly makes the most sense. We get down to that essential, get rid of the nonsense, strategize on how to make it work, systematize it so it works over and over and over again. Make sure the system and you are held accountable with my coaching, and then we see what happens. Let's go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all